1-888-64-TINIES. And thank you.
We now return to
Here we go, Hot
Real
Mic.
Estate, sponsored by Boston Connect Real Estate Services on 95.9 WATD.
And we're back. Hello to all our South Shore neighbors, and we are up and running, and you will be able to see us pretty soon on Facebook because Melissa did get everything all put together and we're good to go. I do want to bring our guest on because I know he is somewhere, so he can't really stay with us very long. So I just want to get some top tips from him before he has to really take off, but he said he would call in. So we have Steve Cook on the line with us. He's from Imperial Inspection Services. He is the best of the best. Interesting. I was talking to a client the other day and actually I set up the appointment for her for Steve, and she had asked, should I be looking at other companies as well? I said, you can, but I don't know any other ones. So there you go. So Steve, do we have you?
I believe so. Good evening.
Hi,
Steve.
Hey.
Well, thank you so much. I know I did call you this afternoon. It was a last minute sort of decision to sort of change, and it was all because of me finding a cartoon this morning. So there we go. And I know you are on your way to an appointment or you're at an appointment. So I
have about 20, 25 minutes, so take your time.
All right, perfect. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about water woes and how to avoid them. And I'm not sure exactly what Melissa had called this, but we're just talking, there's been so much water going on. So I'm wondering if you're seeing a lot of interesting things at your home inspections, which is one thing. I'm hoping that you'll be able to give our listeners here on WATD, and we're on Facebook and everything. If you'll be able to, shed some light on things and maintenance that people can do to avoid situations where they would end up with water in the basement, and some of your top tips. So I don't know where you want to start, but did you hear some of my story about water in the basement? And Mark and I were over there.
Found out being a water tank, a hot water tank.
Ended up being a water tank. And here's my client. So it was the house in Whitman, the ranch, the one that, the shingles weren't what they were told they were. Remember that one?
I do remember that, yes.
Yeah. So he called because he said that there was some water, and I just think it's interesting. And this is one of the things that is so important for our listeners. If you're buying a house, and everybody, we've been talking about this, so many buyers are waiving their home inspection contingency to get the house. And I don't recommend that. I mean, Mary and I go through homes because we've been through so many of them with Steve. We have a lot of experience with it, but we're not the professional. I thought that there was water. At some point there was water in this basement. I asked the agent, she said no. Then Steve did the inspection and he picked up on a couple things in particular. So I asked again, and then suddenly there was like an ice dam or something. But do you want to give some of the indicators to you that there has been water in a basement before when you are doing a home inspection for somebody?
Yeah, first thing, as soon as you open that door to the basement, if you have that musty odor, that's usually the first sign of high humidity or potential water in the basement. And then as you proceed into the basement, then you kind of walk around the foundation. And another sign is if you see this white, like fluffy stuff that's on the foundation, that's called efflorescence. And that's usually an indication of water collecting on the outside of the foundation, kind of seeping in and causing that lime or salt to reach into the home. Another sign is if you look at the support columns of the house, whether they be made out of metal or if they're made out of wood. If you look at the base area, usually if you have a steel column, usually you find a distinct rust ring along the base, and that's something, it isn't from one or two times that you have water on the base, and that's usually an ongoing problem, and usually the height of that distinct rust ring usually kind of lets you know the elevation of the water downstairs, whether it be an inch, 6 inches, or a foot at times. And the same thing would relate if you get into wooden support posts. Then you see the water stains, and in worst case scenarios, if you have a lot of water, will tend to decay or cause wood rot on the actual supports. Mm-hmm. And those are things that are not easily changed inside the home. A lot of people, they'll paint the basements. That's usually a good sign that they have a concern downstairs. But there's so many things you can look at to see if there's been a past problem or, an ongoing concern in the house. And the last thing that we look at are the stairs leading to the basement. Those have usually been there since the house has been built. And if you look at the base of the stairs in relationship to the floor, you have the stringers which the treads sit on, and usually you'll see water stained foot rot or some sort of decay, and that's another indicator that the basement has had water before. Some things you can do on the outside of the house to help, sometimes subside and sometimes actually eliminate water is, one, keeping your gutters clean, and then two, making sure they're flowing properly towards the downspouts. And if all that is happening properly is where your downspouts join up with the ground, it's nice to get at least a little 4-foot extension on them to kind of shed the water up and away from the property instead of distributing it all next to the foundation, because you could try to create water problems. These are the things that you can do to pretty much guarantee seepage or water getting into your basement. The other which we come across a lot is the grade on the house in relationship to the foundation. Usually you like to have the grade, pitched so the water runs away from the home. And what happens a lot of times, the grade is neutral or tipped towards the house. So every time it rains, the water runs right towards the home. And that's another thing that can cause, seepage or water concerns downstairs in the basement. And sometimes, if those type of things, getting the grade straightened out, extensions on the downspouts doesn't take care of it to your satisfaction, your next step is getting a professional company in there to put some sort of a sub pump or a perimeter or a French drain inside the house to control the water.
So you just summed up our whole show.
Yeah,
we can
much.
Go now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. It's been really great.
And so that's it. I mean, you just heard it right here. But I think that I'll just get back to the one house in particular is a couple of telltale signs. And it's interesting to me too, because when I go into people's homes doing an analysis for them, because again, I do a lot of the listing part for our team. And if I see different things like that Steve has showed me, like this is an indicator that there is an issue, or there has been, or there was, it could have been resolved, but knowing that it was resolved is a big thing. And that's why when I tell people, and I'm sure all of our WATD listeners and Facebook fans out there, or whatever they are actually probably sick of hearing me say this, but I go through somebody's home with the eyes of a buyer, because buyers are looking for what's wrong, not for what's right. So if I'm walking through a basement and I see, let's just say it's a finished basement, and I can see like wood jams, they're all punky on the corners, and you can see like there was water at one point. You can actually see the height of it.
Yeah.
And also like it sucks up into the, into the sheetrock or wood. Like some of the older homes, I was in an older home recently and I saw it in the wood. So it had been there. Now, when it happened, these people didn't happen to know, but I was like, well, it did happen at some time. The other thing, and what Steve picked up on this house was, I don't even know what they're called, Steve, but they're not like real wood, but like, remember like those closet doors was where the oil tank was behind that oil. There was an oil tank, and then there was like these, the doors.
Yeah, they're just kind of made out of like a cardboard base or a masonite type material, and they're like a sponge. As soon as they get a little bit of moisture in them, they tend to be like a brand new sponge from Stop and Shop will just absorb the water and starting to, get thicker, and then it separates from the frame.
Yeah. So that happened. And then the other telltale that Steve picked up on this house that I didn't notice, I noticed because you could see like the brown stain on the bottom. Yeah. Like where the water was seeping up, but Steve had noticed that the legs on the oil tank were rusted. So that was an indicator too. You're so smart, Steve. Yeah. So, and that's the other thing too, is, you did put a lot of everything in there. So I know Melissa has a whole agenda here, so you might have to repeat yourself on some of these pieces and topics. What do you got for us, Mel?
Well, we were just going to start off with signs that you may have water in the basement. So the first one that I had on my list was I'm going to butcher this, the efflorescence. Is that what it's called?
Efflorescence, yes.
Okay. Is that what makes your walls sparkle, sort of? Like a white powdery substance?
What it was is you end up with this white powdery stuff on the walls, and if you touch it, it's almost like a talcum powder, and that's the efflorescence.
Yeah. So that's an indicator that water is seeping through your walls, correct?
Either seeping through or just a very, very high moisture content on the back side of it.
Another sign you did talk about, like a musty odor. So a lot of the times, like we'll walk into homes and we'll go into the basement, and all of a sudden it just hits you like a train when you open the door. So like, you know, you can put like a dehumidifier down there and stuff like that, but it's not, obviously that's not going to get rid of the issue, but it is an indicator that you have water somewhere in the basement. Mold, obviously, if you see mold, you want it to get inspected by a mold specialist.
If you see the mushrooms growing down there.
You can have a mushroom garden down there. And then Sharon, you talked about stains. So, you know, are the floors, walls, or ceiling discovered? Most of the stains are like a yellowish brown, or like brown, even black or green.
Well, one of the other things too, I'm just thinking of this one house. And again, we did bring up the fact that there was water, but when we went there the other day, it had like part of the floor was almost like a laminate floor, like wood laminate on one side of it, but the other had like these like vinyl tiles, but they were all like peeling up. And now they got so much water because he was literally trying to pump water, thinking it was groundwater. He thought at some point, it must have a crack in the foundation. But that's the other thing too that's hard for Steve is he couldn't even, you have these tiles stuck to the floor in a basement, so you can't even see the foundation floor if there is a crack or anything. So is somebody hiding something? You would hope not. But I said to him, after all this water, he's going to have to definitely, he called insurance company and everything. I'll have to follow up. It all has to come up because it's all underneath that. Yeah. It was a mess.
Water's terrible. It gets underneath there, and it actually ruins the adhesive where everything's glued down to the floor.
Yeah.
You know what else, Steve, in this house? Well, it's not funny, but this is, first of all, my client, I love them. They're like family to me. Well, they are family to me. So it's my best friend's mother and stepfather. And, he had been thinking, I think I got the problem solved. One of the drains, like one of the gutters was going into like sort of this like drain down, wherever the downspout came down, but that got clogged. So he fixed it. So he was only getting like some dripping in the corner where this oil tank was. And then it stopped. And then like 5 days later, water started pouring in again. And he was like, it must be coming up from the ground. Like everything else is clear. I can't figure it out. So that's when Mark and I were like, all right, let us just go over there and just see what the heck is going on over there. And now I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be a 93A lawsuit because this chick definitely lied. Like if she was getting this much water, he was down there with a wet vac, just sucking up water for 5 days. Couldn't keep up with it. Couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Lo and behold, go around the corner and the water heater was gone. So he was literally just sucking up water against the tide. Yeah. Like he should have just went down to Nantasket Beach. He would have gotten further. What were you saying, Steve?
Yeah, that hot water tank just kept replacing the water that he's sucking up down below.
Yeah. Or we just kept on going and going and going and going. So we finally got that shut off. Mark had to replace it, but there was water literally everywhere. Everything, it was a mess.
Yeah. Water can cause a lot of damage if it's not taken care of properly, especially, and I think our past show with Watchman Waterproofing is on talkrealestateroundtable.com, or you can go into your podcast app and look for it. But they talk about how you can remediate the issue. So it's taking the water out and also making sure that you don't get water back in. So you're waterproofing your basement.
Well, one of the interesting things too is, and I'm really concerned because they are older. So, I mean, she's going to be turning 80 in September. And I'm really concerned about mold and the amount of water that they were getting. And he called ServPro initially before he called me, which makes sense. And they said, well, we can't come out until you stop the water, Yeah. So, I mean, you just have to be careful because if that mold grows down there.
And I get nervous, like when there's water in the basement and with like electricity.
Oh, he had extension cords, go to a Christmas tree.
Don't even tell me.
Draped in water. Yeah. Steve, let me ask you a question about that too, though, is you know, like and it's, I sort of know the answer, but like I'd love for you to explain to people. One of the things that he had said to me, and I was like, you really, really have to get this taken care of. I mean, you know, Joni's going to be 80 and she is a smoker. She always has been. Like, we just have to be careful. And he's like, well, she never comes down to the basement anyways. That doesn't really matter, does it?
It does not, you know, because what happens is say if you have a forced hot air system, AC, that stuff's going to permeate up throughout the home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to have the concern, you know, upstairs, you know, probably sooner than later, you know, you're just going to fester downstairs. So as soon as they get that dried out, you want to get someone to come in there to see if you do have any mold growth in there. If they do have some, you want to get it treated, remediated, and...
Is there like a time frame where you have to like sort of give it like time
How
for
long
mold?
there?
Like, yeah,
like how fast
long?
does mold start
Yeah.
after it's dried up? Like if you dry it out.
After 7 days, you know, something, you go in the bathroom and you wash the ceilings, and 7 days later, if you don't use the fan and 15-minute showers twice a day, you're going to have, you know, mildew or mold starting to grow on the ceiling very quickly.
Yeah.
It's like a big petri dish.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, I did put on my list home inspection is a great way to know if you have water in the basement. Well, if you're a buyer, at least, you know,
Mhm.
you're going through a house and you want to make sure that you don't have water in the basement. Always get a home inspection. Always call.
Mhm.
Always call.
Well, and I think
Imperial.
it's really, yeah, always call Imperial. Who else would you call? That was funny when they asked me for another like referral. I was like, well, that's who I use. If you don't feel comfortable
Google
with my
it.
referral, you'll have to use Google. But one of the things, yeah, actually, I'm going to see you tomorrow, actually, at 2:00 in Rosenville. One of the other things too with the water in the basement, I just sort of lost my train of thought there. Oh, well, one of the things that's really important for homeowners is, you know, I just think about like, these are two people that really don't go in their basement. And, you know, I guess it's really important to go down in your basement every so often, because there was no indicator, like they didn't, you know, they were still getting hot water. So
Yeah.
there was no indicator that the water heater was gone.
Well, I'm just thinking about, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
Nope, I was just agreeing with you. No indication that the hot water tank was gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So you should go down there.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about like at our house, like we don't really go down in the basement, like because it's unfinished. So it's really just storage, or like I'll go tomorrow because that's where Zoe's box is because I have to take her to the vet. But like other than that, I don't really go down to the basement. But you know, so you think about, you talked about the crack in your
My chimney.
Chimney because you never notice it because you never go on that side of the house. Well,
Mhm.
if you never really go into your unfinished basement, you know, unless you need some sort of storage, especially if you don't have laundry down there or anything, like how often do you really go down in your basement? So you should add that. We have to add that to our list that we give every year to people.
Yeah.
Like, these are things you have to check for.
Yeah. Well, people should be going down there more often. I would guess more often than not.
Well, I mean, don't like it's unfinished. You can't live down there.
Well, yeah, but you should check it. I would say check it once a week.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, your water heater could be going right now. I mean, you could have like a foot of water down there. You don't even know.
I have no idea. That's not my problem. That's Mary and Sam's problem. Oh, Mary is not with us tonight.
Oh, yes.
But she'll be back next week.
Yes,
But,
she will.
Yeah. So can we talk more about how you can get water into your basement? So we talked about cracks in your basement walls and floors, broken and leaking pipes. Again, might be an indicator that you would get water down there. Poor drainage around your home. You sort of talked about it briefly about, you know, doing some drainage or whatever, but I was looking up some things that you can sort of prevent water getting into your basement around. So if you check your landscaping, your soil should slope away from the foundation to make sure that water flows away. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about when we were talking about termites. So when you have like wood chips around your house, that attracts more termites. So you really should have that drainage sort of going away. So if you could do rocks or something that would sort of like make it flow, it should be flowing away from your house. So your downspouts, your gutters and everything.
Yeah, but usually rocks are your best bet because I see a lot of people that
Don't listen to me, anybody. We were talking about the rocks because we were talking about termites a couple weeks ago, and so it's not like really great to put mulch like around your house, like near the foundation, right up against the foundation.
So what is your suggestion? Why wouldn't you want to put rocks there because of water?
Yeah, what happens with the rocks is, say, if your grade is already tipped toward the house, and then you put rocks on it, the rocks are very permeable, and the water's just going to filter through the rocks, and you're going to have the same situation, but it's just going to look pretty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's not good.
So
You know
it's putting a solid base on there, so it's going to take that water and allow it to channel away, from the home.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually just thinking about, how important it is to like actually walk around your house often, because now it's weird though, because I am using my own situations here as an example, but even it was just yesterday morning, I was up early and I had noticed like some cobwebby stuff over near my garage. Now we put the garage up, 3 years ago. And I just happened to notice, like I was underneath and I just sort of blew like the water. I didn't blow up the water, but you know what I mean? I was spraying the water up there. And then I saw like a clunk of mud and I was like, oh my God, I think the gutters are full.
Mm-hmm.
So that's regular maintenance that people should be doing every year, probably a couple times a year, depending on when the trees are shedding or whatever. What do they call that? What do they when the leaves fall from a tree? What's that called?
I don't know. Change of season.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know the technical term. Maybe we can call somebody.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but when they're shedding leaves, when the leaves are falling, I mean, you should check that. But we have pine trees, so they were stuffed with that. But now I'm interested. So Steve, I have no idea. So I might have to talk to you off air. There's a corner of my house. I have a cape. So looking at the front of the house, there was some like cobwebby thing. So I was like, all right, let me just spray those off with some water. But before that, I heard drip, drip, drip. Now we don't use our front door to go into the house. We use our side door.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? And I looked, Steve, like right in the front of my house, there's like, you can see this wherever this water is coming from has been dripping for a very long time because it made a hole.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I cannot figure out where it's coming from. My guess might be, I know we have an AC thing up in the attic. It must be like, that's something I should probably check.
Yeah, maybe. You should probably
Yeah,
check.
it might be the condensation drain tube from the air conditioner for the condensation to go out, because a lot of times they'll tie that into a gutter, and that's why on a dry day and you have your AC running, you'll see water coming out of your downspouts. That's just to condensate from the AC unit.
All right. So that's probably what it is.
Michelle Fay, who is a full-time real estate agent here at Boston Connect Real Estate, is watching us live on Facebook. And she said, hi, I did once when I first bought my house and the contractor put dirt up against the foundation and haven't had any since.
So the house that you're in right now, I wonder?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was her buyer's agent on that. So the contractor put dirt up. So maybe it wasn't graded the right way.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, Steve, how does water get through cement? Like if you have a concrete foundation, I mean, water can just like get through cement.
It just finds its way
Through the concrete, but what it does is those are the signs that there's a lot of water collection on the backside of those concrete foundations. And say if you do have a crack in the foundation, that will find it and kind of make its way into the house. And then the other is if you put enough water on the outside, sometimes the water will tend to come up between where the floor joins up with the foundation wall. There's always a little bit of a gap or a seam there, and if you put enough water pressure on there, it will come up through there too.
Interesting. The more you know.
I know.
I love that like rainbow thing that on NBC. The more you know.
Oh yeah. Well, right now, can you see me? I'm like in a daze right
You're
now
like,
because I'm like, well, no, because I'm thinking about like all the different areas where you could get water. Like, okay, so now we're talking about water in the basement. Steve, do you have any other like tips or insight about water in the basement, what people should be looking for or what they can do to prevent the water in the basement? Because then I'd like to talk about water stains on the ceilings and what you're seeing with that.
And we should talk about sump pumps.
Yeah, that pretty much covers everything for water in the basement. And every house is individual, and those are the telltale signs. And you bring someone that specializes in that, and then kind of pinpoint what the solution would be, for the home.
Mm-hmm. I know sometimes too, Steve, I've heard you. I remember one time I was with you. This is where my mind is like scattered. I'm sorry to all IWAT listeners. You are listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable. You're listening to myself, Sharon McNamara. I'm the broker owner of Boston Connect Real Estate here on the South Shore, along with the director of operations and everything else that happens in this building, and with our agents, Melissa Wallace. Again, with Steve Cook from Imperial Inspection Services, the best of the best. And I'm not lying. I wouldn't refer him if I thought that he was not a good one. So the only one that I would ever trust my clients or my family to. And we're talking about water woes and how to prevent water woes in your house. But what are we going to just say something about water? Oh, so like
Water's on the ceiling.
yeah, water in the ceiling. But oh, I know, in the basement. One other thing. I remember being with you one time and there was actually like a mud level on something. Like you could actually see. I mean, you know what it was? I think it was on the furnace or the water heater. Or it was on one of the boiler or something. And Steve's, you were like, oh, there must have been water at some point. Like, so he's looking for everything. And I think homeowners think that they can get away with it.
Yeah, we look to take the cover off the boiler. A lot of times if the homeowner's, trying to clean something up, they'll do the outside of the boiler, but they don't know the inside. That we take a look, and then you open up the boiler, and then right on the inside, you'll see this almost like a silt line 6 to 12 inches off the floor, and then you can say, geez, you've had water at this depth, a few times, and then you can usually count how many times where the silt line is.
Yeah. See, it's so interesting. It was almost like being in the Grand Canyon with him and he was like counting the layers of like earth. But that again, you hate to think that somebody is being that they're just, that they're not disclosing everything. But as listing agents, people will ask me questions and my response is always, the seller has informed me. I have never lived here. Like, I don't know. So, to think that, somebody would take the time to wash the outside of a boiler, not realizing we're looking on the inside too. So that's sort of scary. So water in ceilings. Can we talk about that? Or did you have other things, Mel?
You can talk about water in ceilings. I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just sort of curious because we're just talking about water. But what made me think about it is my AC condenser being up in my ceiling. I mean, up in my attic. Mm-hmm. That should probably be checked every so often, right?
I would think.
Right. Yeah. Usually once a year, when you change the filter up there, you want to see if anything's been overflowing. You look at the condensation overflow pan, and a lot of times if you have a concern, you'll see rust inside there, or sometimes, physical water. And those are things, when you first fire it up, after, say, an hour running, you may just want to poke your head back up there. Just make sure that the water's draining off properly. The insulation hasn't fallen off the low-pressure line, and it's not dripping all over the place. And
yeah. When I turned the AC on for the first time in the office this year, I called Mark before to get permission. It's like, you don't have to call me. And I'm like, no, I'm just more like, I want to know, is it going to blow up or like water going to come through the ceiling? Like, I just want to make sure that doesn't happen before I turn it on. But he gave me the go and he's like, I'll check on it later. So,
oh boy.
So I got permission from Mr. McNamara.
Yes. Because I think our condenser is up there too, right? Is it the condenser that's up there? Because I feel like the condenser is outside.
Something is in the attic.
The condenser's outside, and the air handler or evaporator is on the inside.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. What he said.
Good thing
I think it's that big thing outside that makes all the noise.
Whatever he said.
Outside.
Yeah, that's what we're agreeing with. All right. So what are some of the other, with all this rain, let's talk about that. So what have you been seeing in some of the home inspections? I mean, have you been using your little moisture meter and seeing all kinds of things with all this weather?
Yep, it just happened on the last call today when I was up in Quincy. And they had a finished-off basement downstairs, and the sheetrock was patched down below, and it was one of those, never had water downstairs, and lo and behold, we look at the backside of the sheetrock from the closet, and there was like mold growing down there, and then I put the moisture meter on it, and it was damp.
The first time.
Yep.
I mean, you don't get mold the first time that you get water.
No, you don't. But, after, if it stays wet for a few weeks, that makes a perfect medium for it to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about sump pumps for a second?
Yeah, you can talk about anything you want. It's our show.
So one of the things that I was looking up of like how you can get water in your basement is, so you put in a sump pump because you have gotten water, but then the sump pump fails. So that is an indicator that you're gonna get some water. And that, do you have any like stories about some pumps failing?
So I do actually, and I mean this is a good one too. I mean we're staying in the basement for a while, so getting rid of the water. I mean, Steve just gave all of our WATD listeners some ideas of, keeping how to keep water out of your house. But if it's coming up through the foundation, is that where it comes when you have groundwater? Like when you put the sump pump in? Is it just coming up through the ground?
That will come right up through the bottom of the foundation, and sometimes there's cracks on the floor, and you've seen it before. The cracks in the basement floor has this white stain along it. That's the efflorescence, and through hydraulic loading, it's pushing the water up through those cracks, and that's what's making those white lines down below.
So then that's when people would put in a sump pump, because then that would take the groundwater, and then you're usually just pushing it away from the house, right? So you're taking the water from out of the house
and then like pump it out.
One is trying to keep the water level below there. But, if you get into a bona fide system like Watchman does, they do a great job on the systems they put in. They usually put a battery backup on there. So in the event of a power failure, and that's when most of the time it's raining, you're getting the water, and the power fails, the pump isn't going to work. But they incorporate a 12-volt battery, which gives you backup, and that pump will kick in, and hopefully, the power will return, before you drain the battery and keep the basement somewhat dry.
Yeah. So it's interesting because the building that we purchased for Boston Connect Real Estate right here in Pembroke Center is, I knew that they had water here, and I've known people, I've asked several times, did they have water? They said no, but there was every indicator that they did have water. But there is a sump pump down there. And it's interesting because we, knock on wood, haven't had any problem with water. And Mark, actually, it was the gutters were coming down and literally going into window
going
wells.
into the window. But when we bought the building, there was a hose coming out of the sump pump, and somebody had cut a hole into the window, and the hose was just like hanging outside of the window, but like the water just dripped right out and went back into the window. So like, and then down the walls. So it didn't really do anything.
It didn't do anything. It was sucking it out and putting it back in. So we haven't had an issue with that. But I did say to Mark this last storm, with all this rain this month, I was like, I would feel much better having a generator up at the office, or one of what Steve was just talking about with the battery backup. So that's on my list of things to do. But one of the things we did do is Mark did put in like a commercial grade dehumidifier here, just because it always just smelled. I hate the smell of a funky basement. It always smelled that way to me. So it's nice and dry now, though.
Yeah. And it's cooler down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What else?
So
we
no
got?
water in the basement here.
Yep. Exactly.
But yeah, so we sort of talked about when a sump pump fails, a water heater fails.
Oh yeah, I got another good story.
Oh, okay.
All right, listen. No, remember the one that the listing that we had down the Cape.
Oh, yeah.
And it was vacant.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Steve. I don't know if nope, Steve wouldn't have been involved in this because I was the listing agent.
You were showing it, weren't you?
Yeah. So what happened? We had all that snow, and down the Cape, they lost electricity for like 3 or 4 days. The house was vacant. Nobody had gone down there. And I was showing the property. So I show up, and, I was go to bring them down into the basement, and no lie, there was up to my shins.
Well, the part that you skipped of that story was you were showing the house, and they had literally just asked you, have they gotten water in the basement? And you said, well, my client has not indicated that they've gotten water in the basement. Open the door. There's water in the basement.
And I go, and I guess
swim in it.
You could literally, I said, and the fishing is free. But it was very apparent what happened is when the electricity kept on going on and off and everything, and it blew out the sump pump.
Yeah.
And then the sump pump wasn't working, and water was just gushing in. So yeah, that was not good.
Yeah. I mean, I think the moral of the story is always, if you have a vacant property, you should always be checking in on it.
There's alarms and things I think that you can get, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if it gets wet, like it would call you.
I would think that it would go off.
They hook right up to your cell phone. They just sit on the floor, and they hook in with your internet in your house or your Wi-Fi. And if the floor becomes damp, it will call your cell phone saying, "Hey, listen,
the floor's wet.
You better go check it out."
Mm-hmm. We only have like 4 minutes left, and I do want to talk about some different things to look for if you do see some water stains on your ceiling, because I'm thinking of a couple, one that always happens. But I do want to let everybody know that Rob Hackla, who does the morning show here at WATD, is having what he's calling celebrity co-hosts with him, and throughout the month of July, I believe, or through August. And I was invited to be one of his co-hosts.
Yeah.
So I am going to be on the air all morning, a Thursday morning, with Rob Hackla doing the morning show from 6 a.m. till 10 a.m.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
So
you get to have a wine break like Kathy Lee and Hoda?
Oh yeah, I wonder. I don't know. Maybe I'll bring some things with me, and we can have some wine, or maybe I'll sample different things with him in the morning. I don't know that Rob would do that. I would.
A mimosa?
Yeah,
I would.
Yeah. So again, listen for me. We won't be I'm not going to be talking real estate. I'm going to be talking about whatever he has on his morning show that day, and just participating as a co-host on WATD this Thursday from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. with Rob Hackla. So please join me and call in. We're getting close to closing here, but closing time. You always sing that.
One last call for
Alcohol. So finish your whiskey and wine. All right. So one thing, Steve, in the kitchen, there's usually like a lot of people, if they have small kids, I'm going to give you a test. There's a water stain. Bathroom is right above it. What's the cause, do you think, of that water stain?
It's usually the bathtub, and usually someone not pulling the shower curtain back, or the kids having a hell of a time up there.
It's so funny, isn't it? Mark, he gets that call all the time, and people are like, something's leaking, one of my pipes is leaking, and they're like completely freaked out. Mark will run the water in the shower. He's like, look, nothing is wet. And then he'll take a cup and he'll literally pour water up against the side of the tub where the tile isn't needing anymore.
Yeah.
The grout's all pulled out, and there you go. So
There you go.
So you don't have to call the plumber and pay that fee. All you have to do is do that test yourself. What are we have 2 minutes. So what are some of, actually, you know what? Instead of talking about this, we'll have Steve on another time. We'll talk about all different things that he does in home inspection, because I definitely want to give him an opportunity to let all of our WATD listeners and our podcast listeners, because you're listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable, how can people get in touch with you if they want to do a home inspection for their own purposes? Because I think it's good to know your own home, or if they are purchasing a home.
Sure, they can reach us at 1-800-440-1141. Again, 1-800-440-1141.
And what is your website?
The Imperial Inspection Services.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you so much, Steve.
And
for
you,
being our co-host.
you can reach me and Melissa at bostonconnect.com. We'll talk to you next week, everybody. Bye, Ben.
Bye, ladies.